Welcome to this in-depth look at all of your main party inside of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. This video was going to be Yuffie focused, just like how Cloud's was, however I thought I'd skip all the basics and just talk about more advanced mechanics for you to implement into your playstyle. I'll start by talking about each character, and at the end I'll show some characters that can work well together, depending on the situation that you're currently in. The first character we're going to be talking about is the person that almost everyone simps for, and that obviously is Tifa. She has the highest base attack power of all other party members and comes in at 3rd place in her magic damage. If we combine her capability of increasing stagger percentage with her abilities, it means that she's a solid unit to put into every party to deal the maximum amount of damage. Her basic triangle ability at Chi level 0 can raise enemy stagger percentage by 5% every time it's used. It also gives around a quarter of an ATB as long as it makes contact with an enemy. When she uses Unbridled Strength, this turns her unique ability into Omni Strike, which raises the stagger percentage by 40. If this attack hits an enemy, it will refund about half an ATB gauge as well, which means that if you're at 2 ATB before an enemy is staggered, you can probably use this about 3 or 4 times before running out of ATB, and that is equivalent to around 120 to 160% even more damage that you and the rest of your party can do. If you go into Chi level 2, you can use Rage and Fall, which increases stagger by only 20%. However, it refunds an entire ATB, which means that you can consistently keep adding 20% more damage over the entire duration of a stagger. An advanced thing you can do with Tifa that does take quite a little bit of practicing is if you hold down square, she will do a punch and follow up with a Chi 0 uppercut. This is a good way to still do the uppercut and increase stagger by 5% while still being in a different Chi level, but that isn't all. If you hold R1 right after a first punch, she will hit the enemy with an uppercut but won't follow up with the animation. This means that you can keep increasing stagger percentage or even charge a bunch of free ATB if you do it over and over again. I would do this so many times in battle as it's what helps her to stand out from the rest of the characters, and honestly she was someone that I would love to use in each encounter. Tifa in Remake could fast dodge if she had the parry material equipped, however in Rebirth this is no longer a thing, but do not fear because you can still slide around the battlefield as if it's made out of ice using this pretty simple trick. If you're in Chi level 0, press dodge in any direction and press triangle immediately after. If you repeat this over and over again as fast as you can, Tifa will zip around, which can also save you from very dangerous enemy attacks. If you aren't in Chi level 0 however, it's a little slower as you have to press a square instead of triangle, otherwise you'll end up using your Omni Strike or Rise and Fall ability. The reason it is slower is because when you attack with Tifa, she likes to dash towards the enemy, and when trying to fast dodge away from an attack, it definitely isn't the most ideal. But either way, this is a great way to protect yourself and get out of the way of any danger. Next, we're going to be talking about Barret. However, to be fair, I haven't really found many advanced tips that I've found throughout my time using him. This was a feature in Remake 2, however I know some people that aren't aware when you use any command with Barret or finish his shots with his square attack, pressing triangle right after will charge his overcharge gauge a lot quicker. This can be combined with the weapon skill Massive Recharge, which increases charge gains every time you press triangle. If you are enjoying the video so far, why not subscribe? These videos do take quite a bit of time to make and showing support would mean a great deal. But let's get into Cait's combat. Cait Sith is definitely a weird character as you never know what he's going to do. He can activate his level 1 Limit Break and it can either do 2000 damage or 20,000, however this is all down to his luck stat. A few of his attacks are luck based, like his Fortune Teller that has a random amount of damage attached to it, and the main way to increase it is by increasing his luck. In his folios he can increase his luck by 100 if riding the Moogle, with the possibility of even more if you have the Lucky Jockey weapon skill equipped. You can get plus 200 extra luck if you're using the red Megafoam. You can find this in Gungaga, and this can really help to increase his damage. When you use his Roll the Dice ability, each number does a different thing, and I'll put up a list of what each one does. An interesting thing about this is that we do actually have some sort of control over the result, since it does have its own physics, and we can push it around if we don't like what it's going to be. Numbers 1 and 3 are pretty self-explanatory, but if you land a 2, that will send a ranged attack towards an enemy. Number 4 gives everyone the Fury status, which increases limit charge rate, which is the cost of receiving more damage from enemies. Number 5 casts Regan on the entire party, and rolling a 6 applies shield, which negates all physical damage for a set time. Cait Sith is also pretty unique in the fact that he can move while casting spells, as well as block attacks and dodge out of the way, however this is only possible if you ride in the Moogle. This can be a big help in some situations as you can be casting a spell while also running away from the enemy, which can keep you safe from all damage. Cait can also fast dodge, or at least faster than his standard one in the same way Tifa does hers. You press circle, triangle and move in the direction that you want to go and span it over and over again. But to be fair, there isn't much else to say about him. He's very chance dependent, and when you're facing tougher opponents, it's best to be able to strategize without needing to worry if RNG will work in your favour. But anyway, next up is going to be Red. Surprisingly, Red is actually a very good support unit. He has weapon abilities that grant the entire party haste, heal the whole party, and even charge up everyone's ATB instantly. However, these are unlocked a little later on into the game. Red is actually second place when it comes to physical attack damage, which is right behind Tifa as well, so he's great all around. When we first get to fight as him, we have the Sentinel stance ability that causes all damage to be immune, which can also raise his Vengeance gauge. When activating Vengeance, he's also immune to all damage during the animation, which really shows how good Red's defense truly is. When in Vengeance mode, he can siphon the enemy's health, which is healing him without the need of spending any ATB. Red is very good at surviving tough opponents, and he can honestly make a fool out of them if you use him to his full potential. Red can also fast dodge, however since he has his Vengeance gauge bound to triangle, we must use square instead, which will let him roll around the field like the true wheel he is. Next up is the Wu-Tai Ninja herself, and of course that is Yuffie. Yuffie is a pretty balanced character when it comes to physical and magic attack, which is great because she can swap between them whenever she wants. This is great for when she needs to stay in the backline, and as soon as the thirst for blood kicks in again, she can zip towards the target and deal physical damage instead. When using ninjutsu on a smaller enemy, it can actually lift them into the air. Follow this up by retrieving it and attacking normally, and you can juggle the enemy without worrying of receiving any of the damage from the other opponents. If Yuffie ends up being inside of a bind attack, she can use blindside, which lets the girl free and saves her from taking any unnecessary damage. However, to do this, you do need to make sure that you've always got one ATB at the ready. Yuffie can also summon a doppelganger of herself, which mimics every action that she does apart from her limit breaks. Since it copies her attacks, I checked how much damage it does in comparison to the real Yuffie, and it seems to be about 20% of the damage per deal. So for example, if we deal 5,000 damage, Doppelganger will deal an extra 1,000 damage, allowing us to have more DPS on her while this is active. When using magic, this doesn't use any extra MP as well, and Doppelganger also casts curative spells, again with the 20% potency. Just like the other characters, Yuffie can also fast dodge by pressing circle and triangle, and this can be done both in her physical stance and her ninjutsu stance, which is very handy. Another thing you can do with Yuffie is if you use enemy skill with her and use Plasma Discharge, if you spam Mug, it refunds ATB, and when you gain ATB while Plasma Discharge is active, you'll do an electrical explosion. This can damage all nearby enemies as well as doing slight stagger to them, which is great. The fact that you can spam this over and over again shows how broken Yuffie truly is. And finally, we can't forget about the wonderful Aerith. She has a lot of uses and is very good when paired with a high magic focus party. First of all, when a character uses a defensive spell inside of an arcane ward, this will cause them to cast it twice. After testing, it seems the second spell does around 45% of the initial damage, which is pretty good since it allows you to go over the damage cap if you reach 9999 damage. The second spell does cost about 30% of the spell's cost too, however this is definitely worth it as you're essentially dealing about 15% more damage for the same amount of ATB. While Aerith inside her Radiant ward, she can dodge a lot quicker, which does allow her to get out of the way of some attacks. And this can be pretty useful because Aerith is essentially a pretty slow unit. When any character is inside the ward and casting any kind of magic, they'll be immune from standard attacks but not from binding attacks, so be careful when you're facing stronger opponents. Aerith is the strongest magic attacker in the party and also has the highest magic and spirit stat, allowing her to give more health when using curative spells in the party. She's a great unit to have when fighting stronger enemies that deal huge damage to the party, as Aerith can get you back to full health and no issues at all. But now I'm just going to talk about a few party combos you could use to get the most out of each character. First off, if we combine Tifa and Cait Sith, we can actually get a stagger gauge to its maximum percentage of 500. To do this, we keep Tifa at Chi level 1 and use her Omni Strike ability, which like we discussed earlier, increases it by a whole 40%. If the enemy can be stopped, Cait Sith should use Stop on an enemy, which can freeze the stagger gauge and make it so that it doesn't decrease anymore. If we combine his time materia with magic focus, this will extend its duration by whatever level you have that materia at, but in order to use it to its full potential, Cait must use his Iron Megaphone weapon with 2 debuff extensions in his weapon skills. This will increase the stop duration by a whole 50% just on its own, and add that to magic focus for a huge amount of time to increase the damage dealt on an enemy. Tifa should choose her Omni Strike, activate Unbound Strength, and repeat while the enemy is stopped to easily get the stagger percentage to its maximum. I did do some testing on some full might summons, and while they were at almost full health from just one stagger, I was able to kill them pretty easily. You don't have to use Cait Sith if you don't want to, however other characters don't have 2 debuff extensions on a singular weapon like he does. Aerith and Cloud have only one weapon with a debuff extension, being her Timeless Rod and his Igneous Saber, while Yuffie has one on her Twin Viper as well as her Crystalline Cross. Using these 3 party members however are decreasing the total stop duration by 25%, but it's up to you to figure out what works best with your playstyle. Another character combo is Aerith and Yuffie. If Yuffie has haste applied with the weapon skill ATB charge rate up and is also inside of Aerith's ATB ward, she can get the party to max ATB in no time at all. How this works is when a character fills an ATB inside of the ATB ward, it charges other party members ATB quite a bit. Yuffie's Brutal form does cost 1 ATB to use, however it refunds a drastic amount back. Now because we've lost an ATB and have essentially charged a new one, the game thinks that we've charged one normally and in turn boosts our party's ATB. All we have to do is keep Brutal forming and our party will be at max ATB very quickly. If you're wondering why we need haste in the weapon skill, it's because haste increases our ATB quicker and the weapon skill gives us 10% more ATB back every time we use Brutal form as well. This is how I took down the hardest challenge in the game. If you want to check that out, I'll leave an icon card at the top right as it was the hardest thing I've had to do in the entire game. And another thing Yuffie and Aerith can do together is if Yuffie has Doppelganger active, we know that it mimics Yuffie's actions. So if we have Yuffie inside of an arcane ward, it will cast 4 spells, which is honestly insane. Now of course, the damage is decreased when we use the ward and Doppelganger, but any extra damage for the same amount of ATB cost is always going to work in your favour. Now, I just found something that made my jaw drop in the middle of making this video from a comment I found on someone else's video while I was researching. These are named tag team attacks and the possibilities it opens up is crazy. To initiate a tag team attack, you need to hold block and swap to a different character. If that character is Cloud, Tifa or Yuffie, swapping to them from another character will place you in the air automatically. The reason this is so good is because of the separate aerial shortcuts and you can access them immediately without dashing with Cloud, using the Ninja skill with Tifa or throwing and retrieving Yuffie's Shuriken. This is especially handy for Cloud as using Brave It in the air does more damage, or you could go into aerial onslaught straight away. If you swap to a grounded ally, they will do a quick attack completely skipping the attack animation. With Barret for example, he does a little shot before going into his minigun attack. Note that if Cait is riding the Moogle, this is the only time tag team will not work. Just a quick thing while we're talking about synergy, using a synergy skill with someone will give a boost in ATB for both characters in the attack. I didn't realise this till a lot later in playthrough, so hopefully you can use this to help you get through tougher opponents. For each of the characters, they all have very difficult battles available once you beat the game, so if you want to check out my very easy to follow guides, I'll leave a playlist for you to check out in the description. If you did enjoy the video, please make sure to like and subscribe as making guides and even just standard let's plays is something I really do enjoy and would love to get more into. So thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.